This is Earthbound and you're watching herts-tv. Hello, I'm Tom and I'm the vocalist of Earthbound.
I'm Chris and I play bass in Earthbound.
Some of us played together as when we were at school, but the sort of proper iteration of Earthbound was probably when you joined, Chris.
Yeah, that was 2017. I spoke to you guys after You Melt to the Masses final, which was the one that Everest Queen and Raise the Void won. Countless Skies headline, remember that for sure.
Yeah, and I think we needed our previous bassist who'd played with us. He went to America, so we got Chris in, and we thought let's properly do this metal thing and try and make a proper crack at it.
Yeah, it was most of that stuff was you were already playing a lot of the songs from around that time, so I just kind of slotted in.
Yeah, we had stuff written, but we hadn't really properly been a band until Chris joined, and then he kind of kicked our butt a little bit, and we got proper.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all went to school together, like me, Chris, Ricky and Louis, and then John was obviously a later addition who we didn't know before he joined.
Like a lot of kids, I played guitar at primary school, had a really crap teacher, and then stopped after about 6 weeks. And then came back, tried to play guitar, was terrible at it, then decided to play bass, and then played bass, and I went off and did music at college, then music at uni. But I didn't actually start playing until I was 15, 16, somewhere around there. So I've been doing it a fair whack of time, but I'm not like a child prodigy or anything.
And I did like musical theatre and all that stuff from when I was growing up. So when like Ricky and Louis first started to play music, they were like, "Oh, you sing, you do like theatre stuff. Do you want to be in like a band?" I was like, oh, "Okay, I guess." Like I was the only kid that was happy to sing. So yeah, I kind of got into it that way. When we first started messing around at school playing music, we were like funk rock, kind of Red Hot Chili Peppers-y stuff, and we just kind of more and more progressed and listened to more things. Like we went to Download and we kind of got really into all that sort of stuff. And I guess each iteration we've kind of been getting adding a few more layers and kind of, we all like bands like Killswitch and, Iron Maiden and stuff, and kind of got more and more. I guess it's just been sort of a gradual progression of the sound kind of we have now, I'd say.
Yeah. Basically, I started writing a load of music, and then I'm a big fan of harmony, and you can't really put complex harmony in a one guitar band. So like a lot of death metal bands will have the at the gates, in flames, harmonized leads and stuff like that. So I was like, well, we need that, but we also don't want to lose having a rhythm guitar at points, because I guess you can like flick a harmonizer pedal on or something, but then you lose all rhythm guitar. So we thought we need a second guitar player, and then did some research locally. John came out top of the pile, so got the job.
Yeah, and we chatted to him at gigs and stuff, and he'd seen us play a few times, so it kind of felt like a good fit.
Well, musically, most of that came from me sitting in my bedroom with too much time on my hands, because I finished uni and then had like 6 months of job hunting, which is hard. So I spent a lot of time writing music. So Remnants was entirely a bedroom thing, and then Louis came up with the main riffs of Suffering, and then because he has no way of recording at home, so basically he comes to my house, we record all the riffs, and then we just go, right, this bit goes here, this bit goes here, we need another section here, and then we'll write that section, and then that's how we write that. And then Worlds Apart was a mixture of jam room and then me taking it home and working on it, because initially we came up with that riff in the room, he came up with the chorus pretty shortly after that, and then we just kind of did the thing where I piece it together. And then Solitude was a weird one, because that was initially just going to be what it is, and then we thought it kind of was too jarring to go from entirely clean into just into the music. So I then came up with this little heavier section that took me far too long to write for what it is, because it is like 4 chords that occur later in the song, but it took me so long to come up with it. Pain in the arse. And then like Vocal melody wise.
Yeah, so I just usually pretty much wait till most of the songs are kind of demoed and down, and then sometimes I have ideas like with Worlds Apart, like the chorus kind of occurred to me, but generally, yeah, I just sort of, once I just listen to them, I just usually grunt out a sort of fake lyric version, and then usually just pop in the lyrics afterwards once I've got the melody kind of down. So yeah, I do quite a bit of the lyric writing. I would say like the majority, but Ricky, the drummer, does quite a fair bit. Like he's always often me and Ricky would just go and sit somewhere, go for a walk, and just basically just bash out loads of different iterations of lyrical stuff. But it depends really. I think especially the newer music that we're writing at the moment, it has been more collaborative. Like Chris wrote a chorus, lyrics, and then he gave them to me, and I was like, yeah, they really work. And then Louis will suggest a little idea or like theme. So it's fairly collaborative. Like I do the bulk of it, but I would say I'm always open if people have a little idea. It's always kind of fun to have a little somebody else's take on it, or even if it's just a thematic kind of idea, or and I can just hone in and be like, okay, we're writing about that general theme. Or someone comes up with a chorus. So it just depends really.
Well, the big difference between this EP and the last one is we've got another writer in the band, so it takes a lot of the weight off of me and Louis, because we both find it quite hard to sit down, and once you know that you've got to get a certain amount of songs by a certain time, you do get that kind of anxiety of, oh, can I do it? But having that extra person just shares the load out, and then makes it a lot easier. And then now that we've got we have more of a style now. So rather than just sitting down and going, I don't know what I'm going to write, you have a ballpark that you're aiming for. So it's a lot easier, like instrumentally at least, to hit that mark.
Yeah, and I think like from a vocals point of view, like there was little moments on Endure that I was like, okay, I'm a lot more comfortable with that, and I like that kind of vocal style, and so I'd like slightly step away from other styles that I didn't feel worked as well as on Endure. So it's fun to just sort of take the little snippet and be like, okay, let's extend that, or try and do something a little bit more interesting, or kind of just push my voice, because I still felt like Endure that I was really learning like my scream techniques and like just vocals in general. So I do feel like it's been nicer for me to be like, oh, on a Desolate, I was like, okay, I can push myself, do a few more harmonies. And I think Dan in the studio was good for that. We recorded with Dan at Avenue Studios, and he was great for being like, okay, just try it a little bit higher, or try that little, which I generally, like, we weren't always necessarily pushing ourselves to do that vocally for me anyway. So it was quite fun, and Louis is always good. He does a lot of the vocals, like backing vocals and extra little bits. So he always adds a little other element. I think we knew that was an element what we like to keep from Endure, like vocally. Like people said they like the kind of dueling vocals between me and Louis, because it's quite a different kind of scream style. So I think we knew on future songs going forward, we're like, okay, that kind of works. Let's try and keep that dynamic going, or push it, or mix it up a little bit on certain tracks. And yeah, so I think from a vocal point of view, that was kind of the way we approached it on Desolate.
By the time I've recorded it and then given it to the other guys to do their bit, it sounds like us. Like initially, it might not sound like it, but as soon as it's got like Louis' lead guitar parts feel, John's rhythm feel, Ricky's kind of feels, and then Tom's vocal on top is glues it together quite well a lot of the time. If you listen to a couple of the demos of it, they don't sound like timbrally. They don't sound a lot like the final product. But once you get to that final product, especially if we have a producer to sit down and make it sound cohesive, it sounds very much like us.
Yeah, and I think we always try to be like, we don't really ever say no to any idea like straight away. Like if somebody comes up with something and it's like, oh, this is a bit of a weird idea, let's give it a go. We always, I think, give it a go and see if it can work. And I think there's always little sections that we try and do something a little bit different from what we've done before. But yeah, like Chris says, by the time we've kind of worked it out, and it always does sound like Earthbound, even if it's a little bit different. And we try to push. We don't want to stay too pigeonholed into one sound. And I think the kind of melodic death metal sound is pretty varied anyway. I mean, I think I hear so many people talking about so many different bands that sound completely different. They're all kind of sit under that umbrella. So we never feel too pigeonholed really, and I don't think we feel too pressured by that kind of sound. It's just nice to you just don't want that feeling where somebody listens to your one track and they literally hear the next track and they think, who's that? Is that the same band? Like, you always want that, even if you think, oh, this one's a bit different from the last track, you want them to be like, it's different, but it's Earthbound kind of thing.
Yeah, well, we did that with Solitude, didn't we? It goes from what is essentially like a pretty straightforward death metal-ish song into clean guitar and then Tom doing a higher range, very like thin sounding vocal, which you don't get that.
Yeah, we hadn't done anything like that on each tour.
And then, but it's the fact that it moves from that into something else, and you go, oh, this makes sense now. This is why they've put it there, and that's what we kind of go for. Is that if there is a weird section, it has to make sense within the context. We wouldn't just start a song with like swing jazz and then it then just stops for no reason. You got to pivot out of swing jazz.
Yeah, you got to find your way out.
Yeah, well, the first one was literally recorded in my bedroom, and that was the first bit of actual like full band production I'd done ever. Because prior to that, I'd only done like a couple of instrumental demos, and then any vocal stuff I'd done had been through uni, and had basically just been like piano ballads, so a singer and a piano. So that's quite easy. You set up a couple of mics, a room mic, and then you're done. Whereas this was a bit more difficult, and then you can really hear that it's a first job. But second one, we demoed them out and it was sounding all right, but we really liked the song, so I approached the guys and said, look, I don't think I can do these songs justice. So we did a bit of research into producers and we came up with Dan, who from Avenue Studios, because he worked with our friends in Raise the Void and then a couple of other bands that we're into, like As Everything Unfolds and Our Hollow Our Home. So we were like, okay, so he knows his stuff. Got in contact with him, and then we organised to go down with him in March of last year. Somewhere around there. Very surprised we got there to find that he's got two incredibly cute little Dachshund dogs who spend the whole time either licking you or pooing on the floor. There's no in between. But that was a great experience. He works incredibly fast, and so maybe you think about it, you go, okay, maybe he's working too fast, and then you get the results back, and you're like, oh no, he just knows what he's doing, to the T, and I'm absolutely smashing out the park with that. So we're super happy with how that sounds like.
Yeah, and it was nice to have someone like I felt like he did a really nice job with my vocals, and he kind of knew exactly. Sort of, he's so good at hearing harsh vocals and like knowing exactly what to do with them and how he needs to play with them, and kind of he was just good at getting quite good takes out of me and being like, okay, so let's try it a little bit, let's add another layer here, or just do that a bit again. Or I think he was that's quite nice to have a producer, just to have that little bit, and it's nice to almost have someone outside the band that just says to you like, oh, it just sounds a little bit funny, just do that a little bit again, or do that. It made me feel a lot more kind of secure, so it was nice from that perspective, and I think it just added a lot of was just a great decision. I think we want to progress in that direction, definitely.
Yeah, there's something I found with producing the first one is that I didn't know when to stop when producing it. So some of it is so overcooked, like it's about having someone who knows when the sound that you're trying to achieve has been achieved, so you can just go, yeah, that's fine, and then the next part. So you're not sat playing this one part for 8 hours because you don't think you got it right enough. Whereas like John smashed out the rhythms for that in a day. Ricky did the drums in a day. I did the bass in a couple of hours because it's bass, therefore easy. And then Louis did the leads in like half a day. And then the rest of it was spent doing vocals with Tom, which is arguably the most important bit of it, if I'm totally honest. But well, Dan definitely has a style. Like if you listen to the stuff, the stuff that Dan has mixed, you can go, that's a Dan. Once you know what it is, you go, that's a Dan Kerr mix. And that's kind of what happened with the EP. Like it was more that I found the sound and then presented it to the rest of the guys. I was like, this is the kind of sound this guy does. Are we happy with that? And everyone was like, yeah, that sounds sick. Let's go with that guy. Because there was a couple of other ones that we looked at that were a bit more old school in their production style. And maybe that wouldn't have fit. In hindsight, maybe that wouldn't have fit as well, because the sound we're going for is definitely more on the modern end of things without going into the all like modern metalcore, like gent kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we're not quite up there. So we wanted to find that middle ground of like old school death metal producers, and then like modern metal, and right in the middle there is Dan, and he's very good at what he does.
And he's good at choruses, and we love choruses. So like, I think we love a catchy chorus, and I think when I listened to his stuff, I was like, okay, he can make these sort of choruses pop and kind of have that sort of clean. I don't know. I'm terrible with production talk, but that sort of sound. I just enjoyed the sound, and I think it worked for us and what we were trying to achieve, really.
He also is very good at adding little embellishments. Like, so if you listen through the EP, he adds lots of little sound effects that make sections go like that, as opposed to just going straight through something.
Yeah. Both Endure and Desolate were both done by Tom Allen. He's an illustrator that I know, and he's based in London. He usually does like all sorts of stuff. Like, he works for Adidas and does like advertising campaigns for Adidas, and like does all sorts of sort of graphic. He's kind of like a graphic designer, but obviously he's done a lot of different art sort of styles. But yeah, we just saw his art style and kind of thought that it would work for us, and it worked. We liked it for Endure. And we liked it for Desolate, so it kind of worked. And I think it kind of fitted. We liked the kind of cohesion between the two with the faces. We just kind of felt it. Yeah, it sort of just fitted what we were trying to go for. And I think we liked that it was quite different from like a lot of sort of your death metal and your classic. We didn't want like loads of, skulls and bats and stuff. It's a cool image, but we felt it can be a little bit overdone. So we kind of wanted, and I don't think it really fits our lyrics and the thing we're kind of going for. So yeah, we wanted something a little bit different, a bit eye-catching. I think like the kind of lighter whites and greys and stuff, it does sort of pop a little bit more.
Just having everything black.
Yeah, just having black. So so we kind of just liked his style, and it kind of worked for us. Our initial brief, when I started writing lyrically, we were thinking quite sort of futuristic, and a lot of the lyrics on the EP are quite to do with sort of technology and just a kind of in a futuristic setting. So I kind of said to Tom, like, if we could have a face, but it sort of looks a little bit artificial, a little bit almost like an AI kind of face. So he tried some different things with like scanning. He did sort of a drawing on oil or like on the canvas, and then scanned it in, and then did sort of digital art over the top, and it kind of gave it that sort of plasticky kind of look, and we kind of wanted that for Desolate because it was set in a more sort of futuristic-y. But yeah, it was quite. It's ambiguous because it's somebody's face, but we kind of wanted that that kind of feeling when you looked at it, that we weren't sure if she was completely human kind of thing. Yeah, we did have quite sort of solid concepts for the songs on Desolate. Like you said, Remnants had a very clear. When I heard the song, I was like, this sounds apocalyptic, and I want to write a song about the end of the world and climate change and basically humans' greed destroying the planet. So we thought that kind of worked for a concept for a song. And it just fit in. That one was just one that just sort of flowed out as soon as I started writing about that, and it's not. You don't have to look too distant into the future to see a world in collapse, sadly. So that one kind of flowed out really easily. And that was a slightly less personal song. That was more conceptual and about the thing. Of Suffering is directly about, I lost someone quite close to me, and it was kind of about suffering and grief, and kind of it got me thinking about, I was in hospital with this person for a long time, and it was all the kind of technology around keeping people alive. It really kind of struck me, and I thought it would be kind of an interesting avenue to explore kind of if in a future world where sort of medicine is just extending people's lives beyond kind of what's actually nice. So I kind of thought that would work as a kind of, a kind of depressing but kind of interesting topic into kind of medicine and grief and death and stuff like that. And then Solitude and Worlds Apart, kind of lyrically, are like one song. They kind of flow into each other, and like we sort of talk about like a concept running through all our music of sort of a traveller kind of character, and with that, I sort of had this concept of if somebody was in love with someone, sort of in a completely different time. So if someone was living 1,000 years before someone else, but they'd been separated through time, and kind of how strange it would be to stand in the same place as that person, like, and but that they're standing in that same place 1,000 years ago, and kind of it just got me thinking. I was in a long distance relationship at the time as well, so kind of on a more personal level, I was like, well, I kind of know those feelings of kind of never quite linking up, and it's kind of difficult to sync with each other. So yeah, I thought that was a kind of fun thing, exactly, feelings of isolation and kind of being separated, and yeah, it kind of just worked and once you get flowing, you're kind of into the idea. With the more personal songs, it might be that I have a strong feeling of the exact feeling I want to get across, but sometimes it might just be helping with like semantics, little tiny things where I'm like, why doesn't this end of this line work? Like, and Ricky or whatever will be like, it's just too many words, you need to just cut out the thing. So it never felt like they were stepping on my toes lyrically in a kind of, like encroaching in a sort of personal thing. It was more that, it was just more that they were trying to help with little bits. But I think I try for the work to kind of be personal, but not like tearing my heart open kind of stuff. Generally, I try to get the feeling and then kind of conceptualize it and make it a bit more accessible and a kind of a bigger concept. So I never really mind if people help collaborate or inject their own ideas into it. And I think we're quite good in the band overall at being like, if someone gives an idea, I think we're happy to be like, I'm not feeling it. You know, I don't think we're quite good at not having any hard feelings in terms of saying, nah, it doesn't work, or okay, I've got this idea, and we're just being like, nah, it's not really kind of working. But I think that's important, because I think if you have too many egos and too much like, this is my baby, no one can get near my baby. I think you can become a bit self-indulgent, and it can be, you need to have that thing of go, listen, I'm not being horrible, but it's a bit rubbish, that bit. So I think that's kind of important.
I've been in quite a few bands over the years that have been promising, but I've had like no drive in them. So when I came into Earthbound, like one of the first things I mentioned was, right, we have to do this properly. Like the songs that they already had kicking around for Endure, like I'm Lucifer was the main one that I'd heard before, because they'd been playing that for a few years, and I was like, that's a really good song. And if you're gonna do more songs like that, it'd be a waste just doing it half-assed. So when I came in, I was like, look, we're doing this properly. We're going to rehearse every week for this amount of time. Then we're going to book some gigs and stuff. Not do the thing where bands will book a couple of gigs, then maybe get 2 rehearsals in, play a few crap gigs, and then lose interest and fall off. So we've kind of kept that going, especially at the moment when we're not gigging. No one is gigging. So we are weekly getting together on Zoom or Facebook Messenger or whatever, and like having like weekly discussions on what we're doing to try and make sure we don't stall at all, because all of us want to make a proper go of this. So making sure we're all on the right page and we're always moving forwards, even if it's just like increments at a time, keeps us all motivated, because that's the thing that I've been in that kills a lot of bands, is like you might be getting a load of momentum for 6 months, and then if you stop for like 2 weeks, someone's going to lose interest and then everything falls off. So if we keep it going, even if it's like little bits at a time, that's what I think is going to keep us moving forwards.
I think we've always got little projects on the go, haven't we? We've kind of all got our little tasks to do. Like Chris might say, oh, okay, I've got to do this little bit of editing for a little bit of content, or I'll be like, right, I've got to get these lyrics for this new song down, and me and Ricky will be like, okay, fine, bro, okay, next Tuesday we'll meet up, we'll chat about the lyrics, and then Louis can come in, I'm not sure about this vocal bit, you can help me with this melody, and I kind of think we're always trying to collaborate, and we'll have a meeting and be like, okay, who thinks we need to do this next, and we'll all just sort of chip in, and kind of helps, doesn't it? We'll be like, okay, let's all think about over the next week before the next meeting, what set list are we going to do next, or we always have something on the go, which does help. It kind of just helps to have your little tasks to do. Keeps you kind of engaged with the band. And
an advantage that we've got as well is that we have like 3 music writers and 2 lyric writers, so it never falls on one person to finish something really. So if I can't think of a riff, I'll basically just like bounce the project out and send it to John and be like, John, can you do something with that? And like Louis does it all the time, where he'll record a voice note on his phone, drop it in the group chat and be like, could someone do something with this please? And then we'll do it, and then we've got most of a song, and then we'll pass it on to him, who will start on melodies, and then a lot of the time Ricky will just listen to it and go, I've got some lyrics for that, and we'll get like a weird whispery voice
Yeah,
note
exactly.
from
He'll
him.
think of like melodies he's great at, just hearing a riff and being like. Sometimes I find something I kind of struggle with if we've got a whole song is I'm kind of like, what is what? Where's the bridge? Where's the verse? It's all merging into kind of one monotonous blob for me. And Ricky's pretty good at being like, right, no, I can hear a verse here. This is the vocal melody for this, and so yeah, exactly. I think I never feel too stressed like, oh god, I've got so much to do vocally, because I can be like, well, Ricky can help me out, or Louis can help me with a little harmony the other day, or even John's got some vocal ideas like lyrically for some of the songs that he wrote on the newer stuff that we're writing. So it never you never feel.
Or you get the weird programmed choir from me, because I can't sing, so when I demo a melody I have to put like MIDI choir in.
It's great stuff.
Maybe we'll release those demos one day, complete with MIDI choir and programmed drums.
Yeah.
I'm a bit weird in the sense that I don't have any other, like, what I'd refer to as like evening interests outside of music. So a lot of these guys, like Tom loves films, John loves films and gaming, Louis loves gaming, Ricky cooks a lot, and Ricky's got a cat to look after as well. I don't do any of that. Like, for fun, I will sit and write music. So I've been doing that since I was 18, 19, and I'm 25 now. So I really have my process down. So if I'm like, I want to write a song that sounds like Obscura, I'm going to sit down and then have a ballpark where to write some stuff like that. So it's more, and something I've kind of had to realise is that not everything you write has to be perfect and end up in a song. You are allowed just to write something and get to the end of it and go, well, that's crap, and then just leave the file and then don't get stressed out about it. You just start something else the next day.
Yeah. I think the same lyrically as well. I've been the same a bit. Like, if I've written a song, lyrics, and I go, actually, they're not that great. I used to be a bit more precious to be like, oh, but I've written them now. And it's like, well, it was a good practice and it's good energy. But I think in terms of motivation, like Chris said, I don't think any of us ever feel like it's a burden or an extra thing band. Like, we all love it. It's all our thing that we've always wanted to do, and like we'd all rather be doing it than our day jobs. So we're all happy to put in the time. We all kind of feel motivated because it's what we like doing, and we love gigging. We love spending our weekends and our Saturday nights and our Friday nights gigging and rehearsing in the week and stuff. So not for me anyway. I don't think it ever feels kind of like a burden or too much. It's always, and it's just fun. Like, they're all my best friends. I like hanging out with them. So it's just a nice time. We have a laugh. So even if we don't feel, even if like at the moment you don't really feel like you're having much progression because you're not playing gigs and you're not getting out there and you're not seeing all the people, but even just hanging out and being able to have like band practices and stuff, it makes you feel like, driven, and you can think, well, at least we can write new songs at the moment. Yeah. Or, there's kind of certain little benefits to this time of like, okay, we have time, we can actually write these songs, get all these little nitty gritty harmonies down, and so you just kind of have to find the upside to these sort of weird moments.
Right, I've got some strong feelings about this. I think the historical concept of an album needs to change, because there are people that will go, no, you release 2 singles and then you put out a 12-song album, and that's not viable anymore. You have to make an album more of an event. So with streaming and stuff, it makes more sense to put out more than 2 singles. So maybe, I don't know, depending on the length of the album, 4, maybe 5 if you've got a longer album. And then you have to make the album release special. So our friends, Countless Skies, have got an album coming out on November the 6th. Buy it now. Cheeky plug, thank you, Ross. The merch they've got coming out with it is very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very like high value. So they've got a lot of big coloured vinyl, marbled vinyl, a load of really cool T-shirt designs that come out, which is the best way to put an album out. Like, if people can stream it, they will stream it. But if they want a really cool looking vinyl with a huge, really cool looking piece of artwork that they can display as a piece of art, or I see some bands doing like digibooks with it and having like art books through, or big long write-ups of the lyrics and stuff like that. That's what people need to be doing. Like, if you have your albums and your EPs and you just put them out on streaming and then have like dual case CDs, that's not really enough anymore. and you have to have, alongside that, you have to have like a lot of video content. Like you can't just have one official video and then like a lyric video for the second single. You have to have like an official video for at least two, some lyric videos, some visualizers, and then personally, depending on what kind of music you're making, I have playthroughs for most of the songs. Like if you're a metal band with some cool looking riffs, make videos of the cool looking riffs. People will want to see it. Like I can't. There's so many bands that I listened to when I was younger that the first thing I do when I listen to them, I go, oh, that's a really cool riff. First thing I do, go on YouTube, blah blah blah, guitar cover, because that was at the time when there was no playthroughs and stuff. But now, like
you can actually watch the band.
You can actually watch like Adam D from Killswitch Engage rip his riffs, and I'm like, if only that was there when I was learning guitar, and if it was in better quality than watching like 2009 YouTube on a 240p webcam that's just horrendously clipping, like that probably would have made me buy into the band even more than I had, because I find that what a lot of bands lack these days is trying to build a personal connection with the fan base, or just personal connection with anyone, if I'm totally honest. A lot of bands will try to appeal to industry more than fans, when nowadays, slightly contentious opinion that you don't need industry. Like you can distribute yourself. There's so many merch companies that are pay per that are pay per print and things like that. So you don't need to pay for merch distribution, or even if you've got enough money. There are so many merch companies these days. You can just buy your own merch and then you can distribute your own merch. The only thing you really need as a band is, if you're big enough to be too busy, a manager, and then if you don't have the contact, a booking agent. Like, there's absolutely no need these days to be going for a label that are just going to take 80% of your revenue when there's so little revenue in the industry anymore. And that's really shown by bands like While She Sleeps, who are maybe not similar to us musically, but like ethos-wise, they are very much like, no, we'll do it ourselves. If they can do it themselves, they will do it themselves. And the fact that they are possibly one of the biggest metal bands in the UK at the moment really is a testament to that, of the hard work. And that's something I'd really like to bring. I think we do is like work hard and try and push ourselves business-wise, rather than just focusing on the music and then expecting someone else to do the business for us.
Yeah, so I think exactly the concept of an album isn't completely dead. I think you've just got to be savvy about it, because I'm a big album listener guy. Like, as a listener, I listen to albums in full, like, every day. Like, I don't really like shuffling weirdly. Like, I just like listening to a full album back to front, because usually they've thought, and also I think that's another important thing, is like getting a good album that actually flows together. And like, I think that's an amazing thing. Once you find an album that it's just like, wow, this flows so like awesomely together, then you're like, before you know it, you're like, oh, I've listened to the whole album. Yeah. So I think you kind of also need to think about that, and a bit of cohesion between the tracks, as well as all the stuff promotionally that Chris said. I think you can still do an album. I think a great album is an amazing thing. I think you've just got to be clever about how you sell it, and
you can't just put it out and expect people to listen to it. You have to do, especially if you're an independent band, you have to do the graft. And it's not just sharing it on Facebook and saying buy my album, when you're essentially just selling to people, especially if you're a local band. You'll be selling to people who have already heard it, probably have already bought it, and probably already own your t-shirts and come to support you at gigs. You need to be trying to push out past that and doing other things to bring eyes to you. And I see a lot of bands not doing that, and especially when they're great bands. When you you see them live, listen to the music, and go, "This is fantastic. Why are more people not listening to this?" Yeah. And most of the time, it's just due to bands not knowing what to do. And I think a lot more bands need to educate themselves on how to grow outside of. Because a lot of people have their minds on like MySpace and like Facebook years ago, where you could get like organic growth and get in front of people, but now, unfortunately,
post and actually the 1,000 people that follow you would see it on that day.
Unfortunately, now you have to pay for that stuff, which is a pain in the arse.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
But there are other ways around that, and if you create engaging content on a regular basis, and I mean regular, you will see that growth. It's just getting the ideas and putting the effort in.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying bands don't put the effort in. It's just mostly the ideas.
And I think it's just because it has just become more disposable. Like music's become easier than ever to get, which is like amazing. Like as a kid, I would have loved to be able to just like pick up any band. And when you were younger, it was a commitment. You'd have to think, well, am I going to spend like £9 on this CD and I might not like it that much? So, but now you can just type in any band and just think, oh, I'll listen to it. And if you don't like it, you just turn it off and go on to the next thing, which is sort of a blessing and a curse because it's horrible for bands that people might just go listen to 5 seconds of the song and go, nah, because I think if you had a CD and that was like all your pocket money back in the day, you'd think, well, I'm going to listen to it. Even if I don't like it, I'm going to give it a good few listens because I've paid my money kind of thing. So I think you have got to engage people and get people interested and get a bit of a connection, like Chris said. Otherwise, it will just go by the wayside. And you've kind of got to almost be happy. You've got to accept that there are going to be people that are only going to listen to like the single of you and then never listen to anything again just because they'll put it on a playlist with a million other metal songs. And you kind of just got to accept that because that's just the way it is now, really.
But even still, if that one person is listening to your music, they're still listening to your music.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'm gonna go. Sorry if I'm going to go on a rant here, but it's people that are very anti-streaming annoy me quite a lot because they're like, "Well, I don't get paid as much." But like, yeah, but if your song gets 650 plays, even if it's only like 650, that's still probably 600 more than what we're going to listen to it if they bought a CD. Because
people have heard your band at the end of the day.
Yeah,
so.
like, and that's a lot. No one buys. I say no one. Very few people will buy CDs from an unknown band, but people are far more likely to stick on a stream of a band because it costs them nothing, and they'll go. And if they like it, bang, that's a fan right there. If they don't, they've still listened to some of your music.
Yeah, you've got 0.001p off them. So,
and even if they don't like it, chances are they'll go, I don't really like that kind of thing. But my friend who's more into melodic metal than me might do. I might recommend it to her. Like I get recommendations all the time from because a lot of people I know that know me know I'm quite into both. Like my two biggest genres are like prog metal and like symphonic metal. So anytime anyone's like, this is a bit too symphonic for me, Chris might like it, and send it to me, and I'm like, most of the time it's great. I love it.
Exactly, and I think it can work really well because your dad's mate down the pub can actually now just listen to an Earthbound CD. Or listen to Earthbound on Spotify or whatever without having to be like, fine. You know, it is kind of nice to have that.
Yeah, and if it's your dad's mate down the pub, they go, I don't like it. It's not a big fan of the vocals.
Yeah, a bit scary.
As every older person says, it's like it's got a good beat. So video games, we are reasonably gamey as a band. Like I'm a big Nintendo fanboy, so I play a lot of Pokémon, and I've recently been playing quite a lot of Animal Crossing, as everyone else has been. But I don't really extend much past Nintendo. I know Louis loves FIFA, and he plays a lot of like games you wouldn't expect him to play as well, though. Like off the top of my head, I can't actually remember. What? Other than FIFA? He plays other games
FIFA
though.
19,
FIFA 20, you know.
Oh yeah, we all do a lot of gamey stuff, and so I guess video games do come in. They do for me actually lyrically sometimes. Like if I'm in a sort of post-apocalyptic headspace, like if I've been playing Fallout or like Metro or like something like that, I do think the whole aesthetic of those sort of games does lend itself to be. You can just kind of get immersed, and especially some of the more historical lyrics on like Endure. Kind of is always fun when you've been like playing something like The Witcher or like Skyrim or something, and you're kind of digging into that, and it kind of, I think it can put you in a kind of quite a creative headspace as well.
So I'll listen to music like that and go, that's a really weird chord change, and then I'll go like transcribe the chord change and then try and work it into what we do. Most of the time it doesn't work because a lot of the Pokemon soundtrack, especially like Gen 4, is very, very jazz. And you've got a lot of slash chords, a lot of chords with big extensions on the top, which you can't really do with distorted guitars, just the way distorted guitars work. So I do try and bring it into the strings and the external instruments that we put in over the top of stuff. But a lot of the time, if we ever put the demos out, you'll hear how much surplus stuff there is, and then by the time we get to recording and studio stuff, it's been brought down. But yeah, there's a lot of groove stuff that I've stolen from Pokemon games. If you can find any, look out for some points if anyone finds any. But it's not super like that's a cool riff. I'm gonna write a riff like that. It's more like conceptual and feeling wise.
Bloodstock was a crazy thing because we were so not expecting to play it, really. I think it totally blindsided us because obviously we didn't win Metal to the Masses like in Hitchin. I went to 13, who it was well deserved. But we'd kind of almost been like, okay, that's the end for us then. We'll maybe another year.
Yeah, after that final, we were like, great, 13-1, well done, lads. We'll go and we were going anyway. Like,
Yeah.
And our mind was very much right. We'll hit next year harder. We'll get there next year. It was actually the really weirdest thing because the morning we received the email from Simon that said, "All right, lads, congratulations, you've won the Hobgoblin video competition to play the New Blood stage." I was just about to buy my ticket. Like, I'm talking about an hour before, I'd moved money from one account into another one to pay for it, and then we got the email from Simon. I was like, "Blimey!" But set wise, we played the same set we did at the Heat, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we did, because we knew it and we knew it was working.
Yeah, so basically when we were rehearsing, we rehearsed and came up with this set list with a couple of segues and things like that, with a bit of an intro track as well. So we knew it. Basically, we could have played that set in our sleep if we weren't so nervous that we couldn't sleep. Yeah. So that was what we got, is that if we knew the set inside out, backwards, and in German, that we could really focus on putting the show on.
Yeah.
Maybe it didn't come out as well as we thought it was when we were playing.
I think it was a ball of energy. I think that was the thing. We were like, I think we were so focused. Especially, I was thinking like, I want to be energetic and I want to be boring. Like, I hate seeing bands that just stand there, and especially like Bloodstock on the New Blood stage or any of those sort of little stages. You want to put on a show. You want to be memorable, because there's so many bands over the weekend that you can just be like having your beer and just instantly forget them. I think, and if they're just standing there playing the guitar, it can be boring. And I always think the benefit of me not being a lead vocalist that plays guitar is that I can move around and do other stuff. It's kind of that freedom that I don't have to be like stuck to the floor kind of thing. So I think it was a ball of energy. It might not be the best set we've ever played.
We know Louis was very nervous because he had a bit of technical difficulty before we went on. Like, his amp just didn't work.
Yeah.
So we had to. The tech, thank Christ, the techs on that stage were as good as they are, because they basically just before he went on, they unplugged something, plugged it in somewhere else, and slapped a clip-on tuner onto his guitar, and he was just like, whew. Yeah, so we were
terrified, but it was and we just wanted to be energetic and put on a show and just be like a ball of raw energy for people, and I think people enjoyed it, and like it was kind of a love letter to the local scene as well. Like, we knew everyone was there. So we instantly felt a little bit more at ease, even if we were terrified. We saw like so many familiar faces, all the people from Club 85, Bob from Club 85 was there, like all of our friends from Countless, Ritual, Dorilis, all those sort of people were all there. So it was instantly, you thought, okay, we're here.
Yeah.
Just think it's Club 85, but a little bit bigger. Like,
that was the thing. That was something that really helped, is that having that core of people there, like, we weren't playing to complete strangers who were like.
Yeah, exactly. Impress me.
Yeah, so we had, and we were quite late on in the day as well. So a few of our friends, shout out Phil Romeo, had a few brewskis beforehand. So pretty loose. So they were making noise, which of course the people behind them who weren't connected to us were like, oh, they're having fun. I might have a bit of fun as well.
Yeah.
And that really loosened us up on stage, which gave us the opportunity to be a bit more moving aroundy.
Yeah, I think when we found out we were clashing with Cannibal Corpse, we were a little bit terrified, because we were like, okay, one of probably the biggest death metal band ever, maybe. But we soon saw, like, and also the rain was in our favour. It started chucking it down with rain, so loads of people piled into the tent at the sort of as the set was going on. So that instantly makes you feel a little bit happier. You're like, oh wow, people are watching us, and you know, even if it's just to stay out of the rain and while they eat their chips, they seem to be enjoying it. So no, it was really good fun.
We had no one throwing piss at us. So.
Yeah, we were lucky. So it was great fun, and it was just energy, nervous experience kind of thing. I do think so to an extent. Like I'm a huge hip hop guy. I love hip hop. It's like probably my most listened to genre next to like metal and country music. So like I do think there's a lot. I think there can be a little bit too much competitiveness when it comes to metal. Like I do think that sometimes there can be a bit of an air, like not from particularly what we felt, but I do think from an outsider perspective, looking at some bands, you do feel that there's a little bit of like hostility of like, we're going to be the best band that are going to pop out of here. And I do think it's nice when you do have a bit more collaboration and kind of have the ethos of let's support each other and any success is a success for metal. And you know, we should kind of be celebrating any time a metal band crosses into the mainstream a little bit, and we should be saying, oh, that's awesome, like, wow, people are listening to metal kind of thing, rather than thinking, oh, I wish it was me kind of thing. So I think in that element, there should be a lot of support, but at the same time, there is a lot of camaraderie, and I think metalheads do kind of stick together, and there is that kind of element of a bit of community and stuff. But I think in terms of like collaboration, I think it's an interesting one, because I think musically, like hip hop's is such a culture of like, yeah, exactly, featuring and reusing people's songs and like covering sections of people's songs, and I think that is very taboo in metal. I don't really know why that is. In a way, I suppose it's just they've come from different like roots and stuff, but I think everyone wants to be an individual more in metal. But I think features are like an interesting thing. Like I think we obviously featured James Pratt from Countless Skies having a guest solo on Either Tomorrow on Endure. So that was like a fun thing. And I think I always like features. Like as a fan, I always find it fun if they're good, if they kind of fit.
Yeah, not like Exhibit appearing on Within Temptations.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a couple albums
within reason, they could be really fun. So I think it's always cool, and I love it when you go to festivals and like another vocalist will pop up and do a little section. Like that's like my favourite thing about being a festival, where you can see that there's loads of bands on a bill and they're all mates, and they're like, oh, well, let's get this vocalist to come out and do a little section. Like I think that's awesome, and it's a little bit of fan service, but it's great, and like you can just tell everyone's having a good time.
I think it's because metal musicians in general are a lot less social than a lot of hip hop fans. Because like there's a lot, there are so many hip hop collectives that just started out as a large group of mates. And it's the same in jazz music. Like Snarky Puppy are probably the biggest one in the world at the moment. They're just a massive jazz collective, just because they started hanging out together and was like, yeah, we'll just collaborate. We'll get people in and out. We don't really have that with metal, because it's always feels to be in a lot more smaller groups that kind of interact with each other, but don't. Like genre wise, you see it because you'll very rarely see a death metal act collaborate with a black metal act. There's like very little crossover there outside of bands like Behemoth, which are a crossover genre itself, but like the dedicated bands don't talk to each other. And like there's a lot of elitism when it comes to collaborating with anything that seems to be like more accessible or poppy.
Too core,
or just like easier to digest. Like you get a lot of bands that won't touch other bands with a barge pole kind of thing, and I think that's where a lot of that attitude comes from, without not collaborating kind of thing. And it's kind of a bit, I think there might be a little bit of tall poppy syndrome in there mixed in, is that people don't want other bands to use them to get ahead, whereas if it actually is, if they use you to get ahead, you can then do this, and then that happens, and then you both end up over here somewhere. It's not the fact they're going to step over you and then kick you into oblivion.
I think there's like you say, I think there's a lot of sub-genre division, whereas I think in hip-hop, people respect a good rapper, and a lot of the time, there is a little bit more of sub-genre division, but there's a lot of that thing, whereas like, I grew up listening to you, I respect you as a rapper, even if rap's changed a lot, I would love you to collaborate and be on this just because of the sort of figure that you are to me, or like the sort of inspiration, or either other way around, if you're an older rapper, you're like, wow, you remind me of me growing up, I want you on my track.
Actually, there's a lot of that in hip hop, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and I think exactly it does come from a different scene, because it comes from like club music, and it's a lot of like people partying together and stuff, and like being like a big group of friends and stuff. Whereas exactly, I think metalheads are a bit nerdier and a bit more insular maybe. And maybe they are a little bit of the, as it's a bit of a stereotype, but they are kind of a bit more of the outsider. So
Yeah.
they are, I think it's always going to be a little bit divided because metalheads are kind of the guys sitting outside in the garden at the party, kind of a little bit on the fringes. So I think that almost is a bit natural. But I would like to see personally a little bit more collaboration. I'd love to see some crazy.
That's the thing. A
crossovers.
lot of metal bands. That's another thing that hasn't crossed over from like hardcore and stuff. Is like metal bands don't do splits. Like
Yeah.
splits would be really great to see in metal, but you see hardcore bands do it all the time, or like anything that has a punk root will do splits all the time. Metal just you might see the occasional like compilation album or something like that, but I haven't seen a new one of those actually come out. Now that I think about it, I've not seen a new one of those since about 2015.
Yeah, no, I think splits are awesome. I think it's a really cool idea, and exactly, I think the punk ethos is a little bit more like we both got nothing. Let's kind of like make something happen, and like house shows and all that thing. That I wish there was a little bit more of that with metal. I wish there was a bit more like let's play in my basement and like I think that's quite an interesting thing, and yeah, I think there should be. I'd like to see more. And I think it's weird that in metal, a lot of the time, like super groups don't really seem to work. Like there's a few that are great, but like it seems to be quite hard to do. I don't know whether it's too many egos or too much sort of thing, but exactly in a lot of other genres, there's like great people do albums and albums together, like completely different artists will just collaborate. And so I would like to see that. I would like to see some of like the big hitters in metal do stuff together, and it's you always hear talk about stuff like there was supposed to be an album with Rob Halford and Bruce Dickinson and Ozzy all on one album at some point in like the 80s and stuff, but it just never seems to actually happen. But yeah, with like country and stuff, you get these like crazy where it's like
Lionel Richie's country album.
Lionel Richie's country album, or you get things where it's literally like Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, and Chris Christopherson being in one group together, and it's like you're the biggest of the genre. It's like you wouldn't get James Hetfield, Ozzy Osbourne, Bruce Dickinson, Rob Halford, all in one band, all doing vocals. Like it would be crazy.
I guess the biggest one of those recently was Watch the Throne. Like Kanye and Jay-Z is the two biggest rappers in the world doing an album about how great they are.
Yeah. So I think it would be interesting. I'd like it if metal was a bit more collaborative and there was a bit more love and a bit more features between bands. I think that would be cool.
I guess it depends on the band. Like, if they're comfortable just releasing the same thing, essentially, over and over again, and it works, and the fans like it, they like it, and it's what they want to do, power to them. If you're a band that the fans like the style that you're making, but you're kind of growing away from it, then you should always do what you want to write. It's... Like, I know loads of people kind of crap on bands for when they get radio friendly, and it works for certain bands and doesn't work for others. Like for example, like when I was younger was a huge fan of the first two Bullet for My Valentine albums, and then kind of drifted away from them as they got more and more like, I wouldn't say radio rock, but like simpler musically, because they're obviously getting better at songwriting, so they're just trimming out a lot of the sections that go on for too long and play too many notes in, which is totally fair. But it's basically just, my opinion on it is just do what makes you happy, really. If you're going to make the music you want to make, if it's the same as your last album, as long as it's not literally just the same songs again, you can be fine. If you want to do something different, do something different.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it does depend on the band, and I always think of it as like, I think of it almost in terms of like horror films. Like I'm a big horror film guy, and I always think like sometimes you just want people to stick to the formula. Like the fans want another Friday the 13th film that's just Jason killing teenagers. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like, it's when people try and make it high concept or change that, people are like, well, no, that's not what people want. And I can see that kind of argument with metal, where it's like, people want Slayer to be Slayer, and they're going to sound like Slayer, and I think that's what people want, and that's probably what they like, and that kind of works. But exactly, but I also think if people want to evolve, it kind of works. Like, and you're under no, I think you don't bands don't owe the fans anything really. At the end of the day, they don't owe their first fans to sound the same. Like, they're making music for themselves. Like, they're the ones who have to play it every single night of their life, like 265 days a year on tour or whatever.
Like, big example is Shikari dropping "Sorry You're Not a Willer."
Yeah, it's like
they just got.
They're sick of it, and it's fine. Like, you had your chance to see it if you wanted to see it. So it's sort of like. Exactly, like people like always say about bring Me the Horizon, like such a big genre change, and it's like it is a big genre change, but also it's been a lot of years, and it's one of those things where, well, I'm sure the people that love the deathcore sound will find other deathcore bands, and the people that like the pop sound have now found a pop band that they love. So I think you've got to always play what you love, and like you don't bother too much, because you'll always, even if you try and stick to the fans and write an album for the fans and write an EP to sound like your sound, there'll always be people who say, well, it just sounds exactly the same, or it doesn't sound as good. It's that sort of like the second album problem, where people say, oh, it's nothing like their first album was so great, or they say, oh, I wanted it to be like just like the first album, they've gone way too crazy, it sounds totally different. And it's like, you're never going to win, you're never going to please everyone, are you?
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's in a band. They're putting out some new music soon, and they put out a single not long ago, and they had some comments on it that were like, oh, I really wish they should have stuck to the sound of their first EP. Their first EP was recorded in a similar manner to our first EP in a bedroom, and it sounded like garbage. So you're always going to get people that go, just because they want to be like big band, and be like, no, they should have stuck to the thing that sounded like absolute shit.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
Just to make themselves feel better. So maybe ignore those guys. Do what you want to do, as long as you're putting your effort into it and your passion into it, and you're enjoying it more. Like, the most importantly.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more depressing than seeing a band play live that just are sick of it. You can just tell instantly, I think, as a fan, like when you see a band that's trotted out to play something and you can just tell they just hate the music. It's so depressing, and you instantly feel like crushed as a fan. I think there's nothing more fun than seeing a band like having a blast and they're clearly enjoying the music. So I think that's what you want, and you're going to put on a better show if you're playing the songs that you love that you've just written, and you prefer them to your old stuff. Then you're going to have a fun time playing it, I guess.
Well, I think for the business end of things, I will literally go through, wait for a band to put out a new album. Like recently, I've been making notes on what Unleash the Archers have been doing. Their new album is great. And I've been making notes on what they've been doing content-wise, how much they've been putting out, what kind of content it is, and trying to scale that to what we do if we were putting out an album in 4 months or whatever. Like, of course, we're not going to be getting interviews with like Rock Sound and Metal Hammer and like any of the huge publications off the bat. But what we can do is scale back, talk to the publications and things that we've built relationships with and for over the last few years, and then get them out of it. And then the next release, grow up a stage from that. The next release, grow up a stage from that. So that's what I do for that. It's very much a lot of watching and learning, because that's the great thing at the moment, which you've got opportunity to watch and learn people who've been doing this job for years. Because like previously, you couldn't do that because it was all being done essentially like kind of behind the scenes, but you'd have to have bought every magazine and stuff to see it. But now you can just go onto their Facebook page and then they'll posted a link to everything that they've done.
Basically looking at the whole campaign.
You're like, great, so we need to do this, and this. It's like costing it out is, a bit of an issue for some bands, but like recently I've been trying to grow our Spotify with as little money as possible. I've been putting like £1 a day into it and stuff like that, and just messing around with adverts and pushing, see if we can get specific kinds of people to listen to it, because I don't listen to them personally, but a lot of people have said that we sound a little bit like Soilwork. So I've been putting our music in front of Soilwork fans to see if it does anything. It's done a little bit. Like we've grown our Spotify. I think we had such a small amount at the start of lockdown, and I think we're at like 600 odd now, which in the grand scheme of things is small fry, but for us, like considering at the start of the year we were on what, like 60?
Yeah.
Like it's pretty decent.
Yeah, and I think we just sort of model ourselves and just push it. We have like band chats. We're always we talk all day, every day, basically on the band chat, and we're just always coming up with ideas. And we have like a business chat that's just for like actual talking about proper band stuff. And we just dump ideas throughout the day. If anything pops into anyone's heads, we just think, oh, let's post that tomorrow, or let's chat about that, or actually, oh, have we ever thought about doing that on our Spotify, or ever putting up that on Facebook? Kind of, we always, and it just keeps it fresh. And I think we're all good friends, so it kind of helps that we just have that kind of constant chatting.
And we're not afraid to go if someone says, I've got an idea. Like we're not afraid to go, no, that's a stupid idea.
Yeah,
exactly. That looks absolutely rinky-dink. Like, don't do that. But we're all comfortable with doing that to each other. So it's not as if we're all piling on one person all the time. Then it's just like, if I come up with a shit idea, Ricky will turn around and go, that's a really shit idea, Chris. We're not doing that. I'll go, fair enough. Next idea. There's in the business chat, there's the infamous Chris voice notes where, because when I work, I spend a lot of time basically sat on my own for part of my job. I do a little bit of lifeguarding, and at the moment, no one wants to swim for obvious reasons. So I will spend hours and hours sat on poolside and just think about things. And then when I come on, because I'm not allowed my phone on poolside, when I come off poolside, I'll do this like 5 voice notes in a row of just me rambling. So that happens pretty frequently in that business chat. So like these lot are a lot more concise with their words. We'll get it in 2 or 3 sentences, and it makes perfect sense. But I can't do that. Well, a lot of the stuff I enjoy seeing on social media is basically just people doing stuff properly. So they're not just dropping the link to their Spotify page and saying listen to it. It's like, okay, why should I listen to it? Do they post anything else other than just advert? So we've got a few bands locally, like Countless Skies, like they've recently started doing that. They've got an album, like, obviously warming up to an album. So they're putting out like bits of their artwork with text on it. Looks super cool. They're doing like not playthrough videos, but like tutorial videos, like because they got some super interesting guitar parts, and a lot of their fans are musicians. So of course it makes sense to put out a tutorial of how to play this very hard guitar part. You see, who else?
We bumped. I mean, we played quite a lot of gigs with
Helgrind,
and that was awesome because that was quite an interesting thing because they are just so tight live and they just bash it out. Like we do half an hour set and we're shattered and we're like because we're putting our energy, and you just see them do like an hour and a half and they're all you know, a lot older than us and a lot more fitter than us because they're all just smash it out. So that was kind of from a live perspective. I was like, okay, right, we got to try and supporting them. We were like, okay, we've got to try and match that.
It's like they're a good 20
and
years
they play
older
about double the BPM to us as well.
They're like 20 years older than us and they play faster than us and then aren't phased by anything. Like that was actually probably the biggest like learning experience we've had is having Paula from Helgrind. Really, like before we'd even got a name for ourselves out or anything, Paula just went, do you want to come gig with us? Because Tom lives over the road from Paula.
Yeah.
I'd noticed him wandering around in this very heavy metal looking jacket, and Paula goes, are you in a band? You look like you're in a band.
Yeah, and we got chatting and she listened to our music and was like, yeah, this is great. So
they're so good as
well.
Yeah,
they were great for us and they were really good. And so that was great. And we've seen quite a lot of bands that were cool over the years. Like we saw some of the New Blood bands like Democratus and like we played with Forlorn Hope, who were great. We saw Sellsword, they were great, and like
still need to work getting a trebuchet on stage for us.
So. That was amazing. So yeah, there's loads. I mean, it's one of those where after this interview, I'm sure I'll kick ourselves and be like, oh, there's so many great bands. But we have played with some amazing bands that really just like put on a great show, or they're so slick, or you listen to their albums, you're like, whoa, this is really amazing. But yeah, there's too many.
Biggest one for me would be don't get too worked up about getting everything right immediately. Like, very few bands are fantastic at their first gig.
Yeah.
And the bands that are tend to have a large amount of experience behind that. Like, if you're 16 walking into your first band, unless you're like Jacob Collier and have been playing every instrument since you were 4 years old, you're going to make mistakes. And on that first gig, it's going to be obvious that you're a new band, but most people, like especially in metal, a lot of fans watching it and go, "Oh, these guys are obviously really, really young. I'm going to cut them some slack."
Yeah, I think people exactly. I think you've got to accept. I'd say to like people, our younger selves, be like, you're gonna be rubbish for a few years because you just are, and you're. And I think also I would say, just try and play loads of gigs in loads of, and just push yourself. Just getting that comfortability to be on stage. Because I think you do see bands where they're quite young, but they're actually incredibly talented. And you think, this guy's been playing guitar, and he probably has been playing guitar since he's 4 years old, but he's never been playing it on stage. He's been playing it in his bedroom for 4 years. So I would say, try and get out there, play some gigs, push yourselves, make it uncomfortable. Try playing in a gig, where they've got no monitors and people are shouting over you and stuff, because it gives you that. I mean, I felt really, even though I've been doing performing in a completely different context of like acting and musical theatre sort of stuff, I felt like such a deer in the headlights when I just felt so terrified. And so I think, I wish I'd just done 10 gigs younger and been rubbish and just sort of got it out of my system. So I think I would say, be in a band, play your gigs and be rubbish and just accept that and try and learn something from each thing and at least try and put the energy in. I'd say that for me, it's always been about energy. I always think if I see a young band, and they're a bit sloppy. They're going about in and out of time, and they might be the singer might be a bit losing his voice halfway through the gig. But I think if they're having fun and they're going mental, I kind of think that's great, and I think go for it. And you think people will cut them a bit of slack because you think, what, fair to them. They're having the time of their life and they're giving it a go, and then they're not going to be good for a few years. But exactly, every band was probably rubbish for every amazing band that's now playing stadiums was playing crappy bars and was probably rubbish at one point.
That's something you mentioned there was that learning something from every experience. That's something I've tried to do for the last few years of gigging, is that try and take something from the last gig. So if just from a bass playing perspective, if I know that my hand gets particularly tired halfway through the third song, I've either got two choices. I've got to practice more and get fitter with my hand, or switch to a different style of playing just for that bit. And if you take each bit of that, by the time you've done 20 gigs or whatever, the set's going to be perfect, and you can focus more on the actual performance side of it. Because a lot of metal bands, as Tom probably mentioned there, is they do focus a bit too much on the playing aspect. Whereas, if you've seen bands, even if they're playing in massive venues with fantastic sound systems, you can't hear every single note, but you can see what everyone is doing constantly. The only thing that really changes that is the drummer. So if the drummer messes up, but the drummer's going to be moving around less unless you're on a bloody Joey Jordanson spinning wheel. So if you make one mistake in a riff in the fourth song, don't beat yourself up about it.
Forgive
no
yourself.
One noticed. I guarantee no one noticed.
I think that's the most important thing. And I think from other aspects of performance, people always said, forgive yourself. It's the same. It's like, forget a line. If you mess up a note, you've got to put it in your brain and just push it out and go, I messed up that line. Move on, and then the next time, after the gig, you can think on it and go, oh, why did I mess up that note? I've really got to go over that line or whatever. But at the time, there's no point, because the more you think on that mistake, you're just going to make mistake. Yeah. So I think it's all about, just say, okay, I made a mistake. Probably no one noticed. If they did, people just think, oh, that was the majority of the people will go, oh, that was a mistake. And then they carry on with the song, and they're not ruminating on that for hours and hours. So you shouldn't do that, because it will psych yourself out, and you get too in your head. And I think at the end of the day, you should try to enjoy yourself on stage, because it's supposed to be fun. And until we're getting paid, as our full-time job to be in it, it's supposed to be enjoyable, really. And it's supposed to be like our pastime and the thing we enjoy to do when we're not at work. So I think if you're getting yourself really stressed about it, don't, because you're supposed to be having fun, and everyone's out here to have a good time. Probably half the people in the audience are drunk anyway, so don't worry, just have a good time and forgive your mistakes.
We've been working on new material for a substantial amount of time now. Of course, we had a bit of a speed bump with not being able to do any rehearsals for a few months, which is not fun. We did initially think about being in the studio around about now, but obviously not.
Yeah.
So we've got songs written. We're getting songs rehearsed. We're probably going to have some new music out some point next year, if everything goes to plan. But for now, we've got something interesting, let's just say, coming out at the end of... Well, actually, by the time you see this, it might already be out if this comes out before the end of September. And we've also got something planned for the end of October. Nice little interesting take on some of our songs. And then a little bit of a throwback coming in for the end of November. So that'll be nice and fun if everything goes to plan.
So,
if not, edit this out.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard at the moment to talk about like future plans because we just don't know. We'd love to be playing gigs. We'd love to be playing festivals next year if we could, but it's so hard to tell whether
we were meant to be out with Helgrind at the moment, weren't we?
Yeah, we were supposed to be already playing gigs with Helgrind at the moment, so it's all sort of a bit up in the air. So we just hope we're going to carry on writing music as much as we can. That's the only thing we can do at the moment is write. Try and create as much content and get people listening. And I think, exactly. Hopefully some interesting stuff coming out as the year goes on. But we just want to hopefully get people listening, carry on building the fan base a little bit, and hopefully play some gigs next year.
So at some point. If we can organise a live stream at some point, we could probably do that.
Do that at some point. But
yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but we'll see what we can adapt to and how the scene is going to adapt to this whole time. But hopefully there'll be some nice content for people who like our music.
Yeah, we're not going completely dark. Don't worry.
We're not going to go dark. We'll carry on posting stuff. We'll carry on creating little bits of content. We just don't know when it will be live.
Yeah.